Lucas Jackson. I'm joined by Jackie Josh, and as you can see, we've gone visual. We've gone visual.
You can
We're not
see us
anymore. We have heads and limbs and bodies. And look, I mean, we've got an action-packed series. John.
We have
action-packed series, and starting with our premiere, which we have Jay Knox from Fight Style Wrestling, and he's our first guest for this series. We are discussing the original brand split back in 2002. We've got some fantastic guests coming up, some new faces, some old faces too, and we are going to be continuing our successful Viewpoint series. And before we get into our meet and gravy episode, let's have some news.
Yeah.
So we begin with the news that for SummerSlam, WWE are planning a unique filming location. We've had several updates throughout this week that they are thinking of maybe a boat or a beach was part of it. They have apparently reached out to a few of the northeastern states. So I'm assuming that'll be like New York, Rhode Island, I think New England, etc. To host the event outside, and they haven't got much interest. But what do you think about them potentially doing something on a boat?
I really like the idea because Chris Jericho did it first, technically, because he obviously has his like wrestling and rock and roll cruise.
Yeah.
The Chris Jericho rock and raving wrestling cruise or something like that. And that's on a cruise ship. That's got wrestling the entire time. So it's not the first time a wrestling show has been on a boat, but it's the first pay-per-view on a boat. In regards to the beach, we haven't had any wrestling on a beach since WCW Bash at the Beach all those years ago.
Yeah. I'm interested. I think obviously they're going for the whole. They want a tagline thing. I guess they want something to show that on a Raw and SmackDown at the PC, fair enough. But for a pay-per-view, you want something bigger. And definitely for SummerSlam, it's a big four event. And I think it's mad to think that a few months ago when this whole situation started, we thought that we'd be seeing fans back for SummerSlam. But obviously we now know that's not going to happen. As Boston, where it was meant to be located, they've said no, you can't have events basically. I'm for this. I think go for it, WWE.
Yeah, I'm up for it.
Give us something different for SummerSlam.
The thing with the PC, like having WWE in the PC like shows weekly, is it really reminds me of just high-end indie shows now, where they've got their basic stage with the ramp, a very small video wall. Like they look like an indie show, and it's adorable.
It is. I mean, obviously, it's not what you expect, but
no, not at all.
It's a good production-wise indie show. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, they've upgraded it since the beginning of COVID, adding like these video pillars either side of the ring now.
Yeah.
Like they've slowly but surely done it.
I think they're going to be there a bit more full time.
Yeah.
And then you got a story from MLW as well.
So, so Major League Wrestling are toying with an idea, and for those UFC fans out there, you'll know that they're trying to counteract the current situation in the world. Some of their international fighters aren't allowed to fly into the US at the moment. So what they've done is they have booked a location somewhere, and they're going to host events there for their international talent that can't come into the US. So they're all going to go there. And they've called that Fight Island. So they're literally just going to have a UFC event on a beach somewhere in the middle of nowhere. But MLW have felt inspired by this and are toying with the idea of Wrestle Island. And I kind of like this idea because with the ongoing situation, it's another way for some indie promotions to bring their shows to life. Because MLW will always be one of my favourite indie promotions in the US, ignoring places like Ring of Honor. But the two locations which they're considering are Hawaii and Puerto Rico. So very tropical. But they're only doing this not necessarily because of the current situation, but that's definitely an inspiration because they're not thinking of doing it until 2021.
Oh, okay.
So I think, from the sounds of things, they're considering making it an actual thing every year. So, carrying on a little bit with the MLW Ireland thing, the reason that they've picked Hawaii and Puerto Rico is because their tag champions, the Von Erichs, well, two of the Von Erichs, live in Hawaii, so they're kind of pushing for this idea, because you don't get much wrestling in Hawaii, so it'd be nice to see it. And then on one of their shows, Hulk Fusion, Savio Vega, one of the CEOs, met with Puerto Rican officials about hosting a Caribbean heavyweight championship match.
Okay.
So all of the possibilities for either of those places hosting it are all there.
They're both unique locations, which I think would definitely draw some eyes. And I guess, obviously, like you said, indie wrestling, they will have to do something different, obviously, coming out of this. And I'm down for it. I think it could be quite cool. I think they are going to be the travel restrictions for quite some time, especially to the US. And yeah, I'm down for it personally. I think anywhere different you can get wrestling is good. You know,
so we've got wrestling on a boat, and wrestling on an island.
There we go.
Wrestling's going on holiday.
Wrestling on the beach as well.
Yeah,
wrestling holiday. Wrestling. You could even get team up someone like Sandals, perhaps, couldn't you? You could get like a wrestling themed holiday resort.
Maybe.
You know, take my money.
Butlins have wrestling.
Next coming out, news-wise, the WWE have announced that the Royal Rumble 2021, they're going to delay the announcement. I don't know why they announced it, but they're going to delay the announcement base of the Royal Rumble 2021. And this is most likely down to the current situation going on in the world. And it probably looks like they might be looking at some other locations, potentially, and perhaps having to obey different laws, different rules, etc. But it all, for me, it fits quite nicely. Not nicely, but fits in with the situation in the world more so than anything on their part. They just want to do they need to wait, I guess. It's a big pay-per-view, you know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's one of those things where even into next year, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, even tomorrow, we don't know if it's suddenly going to go away. Like, it's one of those things where this could be life for the next 5 years, for all we know. Like, it's difficult to judge it. So I understand WWE not wanting to kind of jump ahead too far. So I think they've made the right decision waiting.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And next, Vince has also nixed these plans for the tiered WWE network system. So to explain to people that are not familiar, a few years ago, it's mentioned a few times now, Vince was planning to basically have a free level of the WWE network where you'd get kind of your basic kind of intro to it for free, obviously, which is what they have released recently. The current tier, the $9.99, you know that price is embedded in our minds. Now, that tier where you get everything, and then they were going to have a higher tier at a price point, I believe, we'll discuss of either $12.99 or $14.99, which would include the pay-per-views. Just to clarify, they would remove the pay-per-views and the NXT takeovers from the $9.99 tier, but you'd get everything else, such as your tape for three, such as your documentary series like The Last Ride and stuff. But
and like weekly shows.
Usually wouldn't get your pay-per-views. But he's nixed that idea and plans to basically stick with the current model they've got, which is the free version and the $9.99 version, including the pay-per-views and the NXT takeovers and NXT depending on your geographical location, as it doesn't air live or a day later. I think in the UK it's a week later.
Yeah, we don't get it live, we get it a week later, and we get Raws and SmackDown, but not like 2 or 3 weeks after.
Yeah, it's quite a delay. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this? You know, is it right move,
I like the idea, sort of, having the tiered system, but I don't think they need 3 tiers. I think they're fine with just the 2, maybe.
Yeah, same.
I think what they should do is have every show a week later for UK and other places that don't get it live, and just make them pay a little bit extra. I'd be happy with that.
I think right now business is up in their price. I think that's always going to be a bit of a hard thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do for now. Maybe they'll reassess it in a few years, and particularly with their current ratings, they can't really afford to charge people more, I'd say. That's another topic altogether. Finally, some little bits coming out. We're just getting a yay or nay on this. So we've got Zack Ryder now wrestling as Matt Cardona, and Cameron, now known as her real name Ariane. They both joined the AEW roster as of this week's edition of Dynamite. I'm interested to see what they're doing with Ryder, Cardona. I have to say I was never a fan of Cameron in WWE.
Where did she go? Where has she suddenly come from? I thought she like dropped off the map for years, didn't she?
It would seem so, but now she seems to have been found and has showed up on Wednesday nights.
It's like if you've ever watched like Bargain Hunters or something like that, or any show where they're like buying garages to search for it. It's like AEW have bought a WWE garage, digging through it, and they just pull out Cameron. It's like, oh, this will be useful.
Yeah, personally, I feel their women's division is lackluster and it needs someone, but not her. That's my take on it. Ryder, I think, Cardona, I think, there's potential there, but Finally, our last little bit, sadly, is Rusev announcing that he's quitting wrestling. He's kind of announced that by his Twitch stream, where he kind of said that he's not a wrestler anymore, that he doesn't want to wrestle anymore, and he's dismissed kind of every major wrestling organisation. I don't know about you, John. I don't think this is the end for Rusev. I think maybe he's waiting to weigh his options a little bit.
I think it's going to be a similar situation to Leo Rush, in the sense of Leo Rush said he's retiring, and then a few months later he goes, I'm going to retire, but I'm going to do like a retirement tour. So I think that's kind of what's going to happen with Rusev. He's going to go, I'm not wrestling anymore. Then he's going to get that itch in a few months and go, all right, one last like run around. But I don't think he'll go for any contracts. I don't think.
No.
AEW, he won't appear. WWE, definitely not. But he might maybe have a stint in TNA, because sometimes they'll just pull people in for a couple matches here and there. He might poke his head in the door.
It seems very much that Impact are happy to kind of take people with these specific deals. Like Gareth Anderson have got a deal where they can wrestle in Japan, as well as Impact, and they're happy to work it around. And I think Impact one of those where if Rusev wants to do his Twitch streaming, I can't believe there's a sentence in 2020. If he wants to do his Twitch streaming around his Impact schedule, then I think Impact would allow it the most out of the other ones.
Impact are quite relaxed, and I think that's why they're going to go far in the next few years again. Like, they since being Impact, they've not really had any bad kind of. Kairi Sane recently left WWE on really good terms, and most of the time with Impact Wrestling, it's the same situation. They're on like good to moderately good terms when they leave. Like, no one leaves Impact unhappy with Impact. They either leave them because they think there's better things they can do, which in fairness, with Impact currently, there are better things you can do. Not necessarily in a sense of the wrestling would be better or the talent would be better, but you can get better money in other companies, and sometimes you have to weigh up your options. But the thing with Impact is, I can definitely see Rusev poking his head in the door, having a few runs, go somewhere else. Because Impact would do that.
Well. I think, he might just want maybe a few months off, and then reassess it. Josh. It just fucked up completely.
Did it?
Yeah, it went weird.
Oh.
Weirdly, it got to the end of your last little bit, so we just literally finished up with. So I was going to say, what was I going to say now? Oh yeah. I remembered it and I forgot it. What was I going to say?
Something about Rusev taking a break.
Yeah, that's okay. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I think potentially he might want to take a break while the world obviously is going after what's going. I think he recently obviously had the virus. So potentially he wants to be a bit more cautious. and for a lot of people, they're not seeing much enjoyment from it without the fans. And so maybe he's thinking, look, I can afford to take 6 months, a year off. Obviously, he has still got Lana's paycheck coming in, which WWE money is pretty good. So, and he probably is sitting quite comfortably. I do hope we do see him again. He's only 34,
Yeah.
so
Well,
probably will see him again.
you say about Lana's paycheck. Rusev was actually in the top 10 highest paid WWE wrestlers, so I reckon he's probably sitting comfortably on a little bit of savings.
Yeah, probably.
I would.
Probably. But yeah, that's the news, folks. Okay, so with that being said, it's time to introduce our guest for this week's episode. We are joined by the star of Fight Star Wrestling, Jay Knox. Hello, Jay. Welcome to Talking Crap. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. Yourselves?
Yeah.
Nothing to complain about.
Yeah. Fun times here. Obviously, still somewhat in some sort of, lockdown has eased up, I guess, so, it's quite nice. But look, we're here to talk about wrestling, and we're going to get straight to it. We are going to be talking about the brand split, the original brand split back in 2002 that took place. Feels like a lifetime ago.
For some, it was.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was 18 years ago, pretty much. It happened, and it was a 9-year kind of period for the WWE. A lot of things kind of happened during that period. We're going to discuss it in some more detail. But first, Jazzy Josh, it's Pipe Bomb promo time.
This is the fun bit that we never tell anyone about. So, Jay, the way this is going to work is...
Oh, God.
It's very simple. All you've got to do is give us a promo, 1 minute long. I'll get a timer up, because I don't have one now. Normally I have the old recording software that has just a clock. But the rules are pretty simple. You've got 1 minute to give us a promo on 2 topics that I will give you, one being a place or championship, well, place and championship potentially, and the other being an opponent. Do you understand the rules?
Yeah, you giving me the opponent as well?
The opponent and the place.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's self-explanatory, really. You'll be given 10 points, 5 by me, 5 point Lucas, same way as usual. But I believe, Lucas, there's now a new twist on it.
Indeed. So this series, we're deciding to do Team Josh versus Team Lucas. And what will happen is that the winning member representative of each team will face off in our finale. We did a coin toss earlier today, and it was determined that you, Jay, are part of Team Josh. So,
hey! Look at that, the first guest that I bring on just happens to be my team.
Well, you can't have a coin toss, unfortunately. But yeah,
True.
You got the rules.
I'll tell you what, though. What a better episode to start the team challenge than the brand split.
Yeah,
I was going to actually say that. I was going to say that.
We're good at coincidences, aren't we? Because the pipe bomb originated on the CM Punk episode.
Indeed it did. Indeed it did.
Right, well,
right, let's get to it.
Let's get started. Jay, your 2 topics are you'll be fighting at Fight Star Pro Wrestling against a good friend of ours, Mad Dog Max. Your 1 minute starts now.
Mad Dog Max, I've known you for a very, very long time. You see, there was once upon a time, you and I were on a tour in Wales on the holiday parks, and on that you managed to defeat me. You got me on my worst day. But you see, the thing is, that was in 2005. I was 2 years into the business, and now it's 15 years later, and I want my win. You are currently the CTW champion, and I want that gold. Now, the thing is, there's one thing that I'm very good at. One thing that I'm very, very good at, and that's taking this hand and knocking people out with it. So, Mad Dog, when we meet in the ring, I'm going to take this left hand and I am going to Knox you out.
Dead on time. Literally, like, the timer went off the moment you finished. I'm impressed. Do you know what, Lucas? Seeing as he's on my team, I'll let you score first, just to see if you're biased or not.
No, we have to be fair. We have to be fair on this. Look, we went to time. That was perfect. I mean, you know, what a way to start the series, I guess, with a on time. We had a lot of people go under, a lot of people go over before. Yeah, I dug that story. I got it. You know, I got it. I think I'm going to have to go quite high with this. I'm going to say 4.
Not bad, not bad. It's the highest score that someone's gotten in their first attempt. Dead on time. There's literally nothing you can argue with about that. The buzzer went off the moment you stopped speaking. I do like the fact that you mentioned CTW in there. CTW being the next indie promotion of the month. It used to be indie promotion of the week, but I can't keep up with that schedule, so I've changed it to indie promotion of the month. Maybe fortnight, who knows. But yeah, that's the next one. Obviously, Fight Star Pro being in there. One of the things I do love about the partnership that you, Red, and Mad Dog all have, and I can't remember his name, Tamura, in Japan, is you always, not trade titles, but you don't care about defending each other's titles in each promotion. So I like the fact that you mentioned that in there. And yeah, and the story's actually pretty accurate to what's already going on with the promotion. So yeah, I'm going to go, without being biased, a 4.
Nice.
So that's a pretty respectable 8 out of 10, considering you had no idea what was happening. But no one does. That's how we keep it fair.
He didn't stutter as well, either, to be fair.
No, you knew exactly what you were doing. But for someone like yourself, who's been in the business quite a few years now, what can we expect?
Well, we did put him under pressure, though.
True.
I'm used to it. I used to work like in entertainment on the holiday parks as well. So the first time I ever presented something, I was working at Trabolgan Holiday Village in Southern Ireland, and they just went, "Yeah, do you fancy presenting something tonight?" I was like, "Well, it's like late night." I'm like, "What is there to present now?" And they went, "Party dancers. There's the mic. On your pop." You're like, ah! I'm a manager. It used to be a nightmare for it. So it was like, what party dances are we doing? And he went, don't worry, we'll you just call it out when you're up there and go with the flow.
I will play it.
Okay, so get on there. And I'd done 3 party dances, and I was like, what party dances do I know? And it's safe to say that my heart was literally like... So I managed to wing it, and he kept on doing things like that. He done it with a game show as well, just one called Go Fetch, and just it was kind of the best training for that. It's just getting thrown right in at the deep end.
Well, there that's how you learn to swim as well.
Future part and promo guests, perhaps take some inspiration from some of your previous employments or whatever. But anyway, we must move on. Well done to that 8 out of 10 score. But brand split. 2002 it went down. It came at the back end of the invasion angle, which we spoke about previously on this. I'm not going to go too much into that. There's a lot of star power left on that roster following the invasion and into 2002. And so it was in storyline, you had Vince McMahon and Ric Flair as the co-owners of the WWF at the time. And then they did a draft. And I don't know about you, but I always think this draft, it felt very real. It felt very, almost like an NFL kind of draft, and that's what they were going after. They had the two kind of, warring kind of figureheads, and they had it. I got a quick look over the draft picks. They picked one from Raw, then SmackDown picked Raw and SmackDown. But I guess, like, someone like yourself, like, was you a fan during the actual undertaking, and then you got into wrestling after that?
I got into it sort of around about the late 2000s, like late end of 2000. So it was just before all that, and then the evasion angle and stuff. When it was happening, like I didn't like there was people that I was disappointed in that weren't in the invasion, and they slowly started bringing them in.
Yeah.
So when the brand split happened, I mean, I've always thought that they should have kind of carried it on and done what they should have done by bringing the guys in and making them part of the NWO, and then having like Shawn Michaels in there, but turning and when Triple H was that, you know, having the DX thing go on and extend it to Survivor Series. So you would have got that then, but they just didn't do that. They just kind of, let's bring them in and kill them off quickly and show that WWE is better than WCW. So it was kind of, I didn't really know WCW, but it was like, oh, they come from WCW, and then they've been, you know, they've lost. So it wasn't that big an impact for these big stars, which I just felt, for me as a fan, was a bit disappointing because they were hyped up so much.
Yeah, I think also at the start of about 2002, the ratings, it was very ratings driven as well, this brand split. They felt that very much, that I think that with WCW closing, ECW closing, that the ratings obviously for Raw would obviously be the equal of the Raw and Nitro ratings, but they weren't. And, you know, they had a lot of star power over this. And I mean, start of 2002, like when you had the NWO start, Shawn Michaels was never meant to wrestle as well. You know, and nor was Ric Flair. So I think that might have factored into it also as well. But it's interesting you say that you got into it kind of at the tail end of the Attitude Era. So I guess it must have been kind of extra exciting, all these kind of new wrestlers kind of coming into WWE.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first pay-per-view I watched, I think, was Armageddon 2000. So obviously, 6-man Hell in a Cell was one of the highlights. The other highlight, one of my favourite matches on that card, and I think it's just because of the promo, was actually Hardcore Holly versus William Regal. I really enjoyed that match. And then obviously it moves on, and then the next thing, it's like, I knew of WCW, of ECW, and I think I'd seen my friend lent me, I think it was Hardcore Justice. So I think I had a bit more expectation from the ECW stars than WCW. So when...
Wait, wasn't Hardcore Justice the TNA pay-per-view?
Yeah,
not
Oh, it is
Hardcore
now.
Justice.
It wasn't
Hardcore
then.
Heaven.
Hardcore Heaven.
No, was it?
Hardcore Heaven was
Heaven.
ECW.
Yeah.
It was ECW.
That was the one. I think it was something like that. Or
You know when it just clicks, you're like,
can't
I've
remember.
heard that before, but not from there.
Yeah, no, it was the TNA ECW one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But no, I think it was something like that. I can't remember what it was now. But I watched that and just had this bigger expectation and thought, oh, we're going to see even more hardcore matches, and we kind of didn't. So, especially in the brand split when they started like unifying the belts as well, it was like, why? The hardcore belt's so much fun.
Yeah, we're going to get to the championships very soon, but like, I think the initial thing for most people was the fact that they split all the tag teams. The WWF obviously in 2000 had a lot of strong tag teams. You had APA, you had the Hardys, you had the Dudleys. Edge and Christian, this is what's get confused. Edge and Christian, they'd actually split before the brand split. And they kind of get thrown in with this, but they already kind of split and went their separate ways. But, you know, splitting 3 tag teams like that, you know, that would be like nowadays splitting like the New Day, the Usos, and, you know, Street Profits, you know, all at the same time. Going, what have you got left? But what's interesting too is that they had the Dudleys, they had Spike team with Bubba still, so they kind of had the Dudleys still, but not the Dudleys. And there was a lot of changes. This the first kind of 6 months was kind of like, I think they were kind of getting used to what they were going to do, because they got rid of the co-owners thing. You know, Vince beat Ric Flair, and he became the total 100% owner again. And then this is what seems really weird, and I think some of our younger viewers might not know this, but this is when general managers started. You know, this was before that. We had obviously commissioners and, you know, people like Jack Tunney and Gwyneth Monsoon, but general managers. Yeah, general manager for the separate brands. And so obviously you have that famous scene now of Eric Bischoff and Vince McMahon hugging on Raw. And obviously Stephanie McMahon became the general manager of SmackDown, and it all just, I think it all just helped it feel very real. I guess I don't know where, I was only about 15, 16 at the time myself, but it all just felt very real. Like it felt very much like, okay, they got managers that are looking after each other, and they had this period as well where superstars could switch between the brands. So like if you felt the grass was greener on Raw or SmackDown as whatever superstar you were, you could go to the other one. And there's like a big deal about people defecting brands, and it felt very real when it happened. So what are your kind of what were your thoughts basically on the general manager idea?
I still can't get over Stephanie McMahon and Eric Bischoff kissing.
Oh, very awkward angle that was.
It's that moment. No.
That's where all the
general
teenage boys go, oh, that's not fair.
Yeah, definitely. I think when they had the Eric Bischoff thing, because again, the internet was still pretty new back then, and I think I was still in school, so I had
social media as well.
I wasn't even in school yet.
Yeah, cheers, mate. I didn't really know who Eric Bischoff was, so I had to Google him at school. So I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. So obviously saw Raw on the Friday night, and then went on to school on the Monday and Googled who he was, and it was like, oh, okay, well this makes sense why there was a lot of booing and what he was saying, but I didn't really know who he was. But I thought it was cool because it meant that at any time, like, Vince McMahon could appear and just basically take control. So I always liked that Austin versus McMahon rivalry, even when it was going on during the invasion angle and stuff. It just kind of added that extra dynamic, and I mean, I know they changed throughout the years, but definitely thought that Eric Bischoff was a very, very interesting one when he started doing the hot lesbian action stuff, and then bringing in the 3-minute warning, and it was like, okay, right, you're gonna get the HLA, and all of a sudden Rosie and Jamal come down and just started beating people up, which I thought was good as well, because then it just bred that into brand rivalry as well, which I thought was quite cool.
I mean, with Bischoff, he famously had, one of the most hottest angles really for the first kind of 6 months was the gay wedding angle they pulled on the SmackDown premiere, I believe, in September 2002, where if people haven't seen this, I think it's one of those now, I do think they'd probably regret it now, because obviously what's going on in the world has been very progressive, but it was very controversial even at that time. That a gay wedding was going to happen on SmackDown, and Eric Bischoff did the whole reveal, prosthetics of himself dressing up as a bloody 100-year-old priest or whatever to give this ceremony, and that look of we're not gay for Billy and Billy and Chuck, and then it led to a 3-minute warning, Rosie and Jamal showing up and beating them up kind of thing, and that was one of the highest rated spots at that time, and then later on SmackDown became home to another storyline, the Al Wilson, Dawn Marie, Tori Wilson storyline. I saw your face there. You've forgotten about it, but the minute I said it, it kind of comes back again. She gave him Viagra on their wedding night. This stuff really happened. So those of you, under 16, under 18 or whatever, under 20 watching this, you'll be thinking this didn't happen. It really did happen in 2002, 2003.
I know the next one you're gonna say, and it's the Raw one, and I'm cringing at that. I know what's coming.
Tell our underage viewers, whatever you do not Google Viagra. Wait until you're old enough and your parents will tell you about it.
But look, we have this
or
really
go
interesting...
to your GP and they'll tell you and probably prescribe it for free.
Probably, true.
Nowadays. But look, we touched upon the belt before we go on some of the extreme moments. We touched upon the belts, and I think this is something which, when I was looking at it, was a bit confusing. They had loads of belts back then, and obviously they had you touched upon the hardcore and the European Championships.
That's a handful of belts now.
Yeah, I mean, they were merged into the IC Championship. Rob Van Dam did both those mergers.
Along with the WCW United States Championship, Chris Jericho merged with the IC title as well. I think 2001.
Before the brand, but yes, they got rid of it, and then they actually got rid of the IC title as well in October 2002. So Raw only had the World Championship, which we'll get to later, because basically it was Brock Lesnar who, when he defeated The Rock at SummerSlam, he became the Undisputed Champion.
No surprise there.
Up until that point, the champions had decided that they would be on both brands, but Brock Lesnar took his services exclusive to SmackDown, and that was the first kind of sign of, like, oh, you know, there's some dissension in this. You know, some people don't want to do the rules, and so they kind of jigged the rules, and they created the World Heavyweight Championship, which obviously was the big gold belt. Gave it to Triple H so that the Raw brand had a World Championship, so the SmackDown brand. And then they got rid of the IC title. They brought it back a few months later after a massive fan backlash. I don't know how they got rid of the IC title, and they added the US title.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it wasn't until 2008 when they added the second Women's Championship, the ill-fated and controversial now Divas Championship.
The thing that really stunted the women's kind of revolution from then.
Oh, absolutely. I think the women were definitely an afterthought. And we've done an amazing episode in Series 1 about the women's wrestling, and we're probably going to do one in this series too.
Shameless plug.
Well, it is just growing and growing, and it just seemed mad that for 6 years there was only one women's championship, and that it wasn't really equal to anything else that the men happened.
Now there's 5.
Yeah, no, yeah. I just feel a bit like the championships were so confusing. SmackDown got tag belts as well in October, and they started treating the brands quite separately after that initial kind of, I guess, when they had like a settling in period. And then it kind of went to, I feel, where the brand split properly came in, when you had the SmackDown 6. I don't remember them, Jay, like Lesnar, Angle, Benoit, Guerrero, Mysterio, and Edge, all having these amazing matches. And then Raw kind of felt very much like, you know, very star powery. So you had Shawn Michaels, Goldberg came in 2003, The Rock came back for his kind of last kind of full-time run in a weird way for a few months in 2003 as well. And Stone Cold came back as the coach and a manager of Raw, and they kind of
to see him in a general manager situation.
Yeah, it was Sheriff, wasn't he? Sorry, yeah, it was a Sheriff. I don't know if I've ever seen the After Hours DVD or special they did with Stone Cold, and some of these just he would keep people happy with hysterics for hours sometimes after the show finished airing on USA. But they kind of rehashed as well the Austin McMahon thing, but with Austin and Bischoff. But what would you say then, was the difference between the brands at that time? Kind of 2003, 2004.
Yeah, it was like, I always felt that if you wanted to be entertained and it was more kind of storyline driven, you'd watch Raw. I mean, I watched both shows, but then when you would watch SmackDown, that's where you'd get your wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, like with the formation of Team Angle and obviously like the tag teams, like you said about the tag teams coming, it kind of felt like they threw tag teams together. So you had Angle and Benoit, you had Edge and Rey Mysterio, and then obviously you had Los Guerreros, which I was quite pleased that they had done that and gave them the belts and they had their run. But it was just, SmackDown became more of the wrestling show, and I enjoyed that because you'd see longer matches, whereas Raw was always opened with a promo, normally by Evolution, and I started to get bored of Triple H and stuff. I was like, I'm only watching this because I want to see what's going on. And it wasn't because Triple H wasn't talented or anything. It was just, I got sick of the shows starting with promos. I was like, I want to see some wrestling.
Still a problem they have now, you could argue, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they have to right now, but it just nah. I mean, it was just that. I mean, obviously, I liked the brand split. I liked how they were two different shows. I just didn't like the fact that Raw was the flagship show, and as you said, was more star power, more to do with story.
Yeah. I think as well, Raw got I mean, they did obviously. They had some people defect as well over the time. Like you mentioned, Benoit, he obviously went to Raw after he won the Rumble, which it became. I think something about the brand split which is quite interesting, and even the current brand split is that it makes these kind of big events feel sometimes bigger. So obviously, when Benoit won that initial Rumble match, and we can talk about him very openly. I don't, we're not one of those kind of places, but Benoit won the Rumble match. Yeah, we're not WWE basically. He won the one match. He chose to obviously go to Raw. He was one of the first people to kind of, have that privilege to do that. Other people obviously followed after that, would defect brands over the years. But then we had, like we said, we had some crazy moments. But we had split pay-per-views, and this has happened in both of the brand splits at the start, and they both got cancelled both times. So split pay-per-view, you had the Raw pay-per-view 1 month and a SmackDown pay-per-view the next month, and then you only at Survivor Series, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, and Rumble would you see inter-brand matches, and it was like that for a very long time. Because like when Randy Orton and Undertaker had a feud, that was not Undertaker. The Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels feud, that was inter-brand. But it was very, very rare that would happen. Did you feel that? And even to now, as then, do you feel that that was a better way of doing it, keeping people completely separate?
Absolutely. I mean, look at it. Like both brands has a world champion, so that just means that there's more opportunity. Like as we know within wrestling, like we are on the indie circuit, we haven't necessarily got the biggest roster, but when you've got a roster that talented and that big, it kind of felt like, if, let's just take Backlash for instance, just throwing out a pay-per-view there. If Backlash was the Raw pay-per-view, the main event had the World Heavyweight title in the main event. If it then was like, I can't even remember, like a Judgment Day, and it was a SmackDown pay-per-view, the WWE title was the main event.
Yeah.
But then when they started mixing the two, obviously the bigger shows, it was like, oh my god, you're going to see practically everyone. But when they just went, no, we're just going to carry on mixing the pay-per-views, you'd get, say, if there was 8 matches on 5th or 6th, you got the World Heavyweight title, and then you would get the WWE title on last. And it just kind of, in a way, it felt like you were downplaying the importance of it. Like, and as well, the same with the Rumble. If at Mania you win the Rumble, your main event is the last match on the card. But then they've even changed that from time to time. It's like, right, you win the Rumble, you get a title shot. So you could be on 5th, and it's like, oh, yay, this is awesome. But again, it just feels kind of like if the winner of the Royal Rumble, the main event, is not last, it waters it down and makes it feel less important.
Yeah, interestingly though, I think that started happening obviously more towards the end of this tenure. I think I was definitely post brand split 1 and before brand split 2. Like definitely, like obviously you had Cena on the Rock, obviously when they had their Mania main event, which is not for championship. So whoever won the Rumble that year, I believe, was Del Rio, won the biggest Royal Rumble, and then obviously he didn't get the main event of WrestleMania. But I mean, split pay-per-views in particular, it's weird because another thing to touch upon, people that might not know, is that they split everyone, and some of the decisions were actually really last minute. So it was production staff, referees, makeup artists.
The argument in wrestling is always that the main event is always what sells the biggest tickets.
Yeah.
So like for me, if the main event is always going to be a title match, or you're bringing the Rock in, do like what they did the following year, put the belt on
The Rock.
Cena, put the belt on the Rock and have him defend it, or put the belt on Cena, do whatever, and then you could always do that he attacks him and whatnot. And I think they now do. They used to do Money in the Bank at WrestleMania at that point, But Del Rio was obviously the winner of the Rumble, and everyone's like expecting that main event. But if he's not going to be the main event, again, it waters down that.
No,
And Cena vs Rock is the biggest draw on the card. No one's going to want to see that on like 5th. You're going to want to see that last. But give it some more meaning.
Even like co-main event,
yeah,
potentially. Like second to last. Like the issue that I'm seeing with having the Royal Rumble winner in a match at WrestleMania, but not being the last or at least second to last, it's like, well, what was the point in winning the Royal Rumble? Like beating 30 other people just to be like 6th on the card, when in the past they've been the main event. Like,
yeah,
it takes away that kind of sense of they've earned something, and just goes, well, you could have just won a normal number one contenders match, right, as opposed to the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I'd argue that the brand of the Rumble is still quite strong though, and obviously, on the most part, I think, I don't know, we have to do, when we do maybe a Rumble episode, we'll talk about the statistics, obviously who has been last, but I think definitely in this period we're talking about, like the first brand period, it was very much that you won the Rumble, you did get the main event at WrestleMania, and you had your championship to choose. And I'd argue to an extent that the championships kind of changed priority quite a lot. And it seemed that they always would favour the WWE Championship, especially once, and someone we have to talk about in this, once John Cena came into the fold. John Cena, obviously a record-setting WWE champion.
And he made the spinny title.
He made the spinny title.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of moments, particularly in the latter half of the 2000s decade, we're talking more like 2006, 2007, 2008, you know, so many fantastic feuds. And obviously he was kind of, him and Orton and Batista for a little while were the ones who stuck, because they had a lot of people they tried to get over during this period that they did not get over. And it was quite, and obviously, especially when we get onto that decade, you know, Angle obviously went to TNA, so did Booker T. You know, Stone Cold, long retired. The Rock went to Hollywood. You know, Shawn Michaels obviously ended up having this kind of amazing comeback during this.
yeah.
Which he wasn't meant to wrestle. This is the thing, Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair were not meant to be wrestlers. Plan for Ric Flair, you know, and it's been confirmed on multiple sources, was that he was meant to just be the commissioner, basically, like a Jack Tunney, and they were going to offer him a lot of money to do that, Hall of Fame, and that would have been it. But the thing that Ric Flair wrestled from 2002 all the way through to 2009, or 2008, one of the two, I think it's 2008. I think it's 2008. You know, which was 6 years basically in the company.
Yeah.
Almost as long as his WCW tenure. And then obviously did go to TNA after that, but less about that the better. And Shawn Michaels too, he wrestled for 8 years, you know, which was equal to pretty much his time prior to injury, you know, back in the 90s. So, you know, we had a lot of these kind of people, and like, but, you know, they were aging, and John Cena, you know, he probably needs an episode of his own, but John Cena, I think, was definitely one of the strongest kind of characters in the brand split, you know, definitely from that latter period. I mean, what are your thoughts on John Cena?
Well, one of the best workers in the world. You know, to stay at that level for so long, have that many world title reigns and draw as many tickets, sell as much merchandise as he has. I see a lot of people knock him down because they're like, oh, he's just there for the, you know, he's the PG champion and all this, and it's like, well, yeah, but think about how many tickets he's sold. He's brought that era on because kids liked what he was doing. They saw him as a colourful Superman, you know. So then you got to think, at the end of the day, if you're going to that level, why is the biggest company in the world going to have you? Because he sells tickets, because he draws on the merchandise, you know, all of these things. So I think the amount of times he's also gone in, he's amazing on the microphone. The amount of times he's gone in and the crowd have just been booing him, and he's managed to flip it round to make them cheer with him, not just for him, but with him. I think it's incredible. It's a testament to his body.
We're recording again.
I think with Cena, obviously he had to be protected for his spot because you only get one go around this. And some people, you got to remember in the WWE, some people are only there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Obviously John Cena's obviously far surpassed that and past anyone's kind of reign as a top tier worker anyway. And I guess you can always say there's people who could have put over, but there was at the time like just only a handful of people really that could really hang with Cena for a long time. And even after the brand split, up to basically when he stopped doing it full time. But he was such a, when people think of the brand, I think Cena definitely one of those where you think, okay, he benefited from this massively. He spent a lot of time obviously at the start on SmackDown, then went to Raw, and that's another thing which I think it felt very much when you went to Raw, it felt very much they're going to make you a big star. Where when you went to SmackDown, it's like, you're a good wrestler, and don't get me wrong, Undertaker as well. So I need to mention this. Undertaker had like he became the SmackDown locker room leader during this period, and a lot of stories coming out. Obviously,
he was actually he was also considered like the wrestling judge for WWE. So much so. Yeah, exactly. So much so that Xavier Woods had him a custom gavel made. Those of you who don't know what a gavel is, it's the weird wooden hammer that a judge uses. But yeah, Xavier Woods gave that to him randomly at a SmackDown show. Maybe not SmackDown, but at a WWE event that they had met at. Because they had met before, but they would. You can probably see it on. Undertaker did an episode after Extreme Rules Just Gone, where he discusses some bits from his career. They did the last Ride series, then they came up with another Undertaker episode. So he's telling the story of how he met Xavier Woods at a WWE event and was telling him all these stories about him being the locker room leader. Also mentioning the wrestling council something. Wrestlers Court, that's it. Because Joey Ryan brought that back in Impact Wrestling, didn't he, recently?
He tried, but I don't think
he tried to
bring it back. Up to recent.
But yeah, so he's telling this story, and then he suddenly goes, "Well, Xavier Woods then went and got me a gavel made," and he brings it out on this episode. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it because I've definitely got something wrong from that.
Well, yeah, I think Taker, though, like, in terms of this era, though, of Taker, it was very important because we touched on the invasion angle before. Like, Undertaker, he played almost no kind of involvement in this. And there was a period, really, where he really wasn't the main guy. The brand split helped that. And, obviously, the fantastic match happened right at the start of the brand, actually, between him and Jeff Hardy, the ladder match, for the Undertaker Championship, which another one, if people get a chance to check it out, it's fantastic.
Amazing match.
But then, a few years later, he's then tearing it up, having these barnstormers of main events against Batista, against Edge, against Kurt Angle, and giving you another side of the Undertaker, and this is when, he is pushing it a bit. And then how do we end it, this decade, this era? We end it with the two best matches he probably ever put on against Shawn Michaels, back to back at WrestleMania.
Yeah. I mean, one match I think is a little bit underrated is the triple threat at Vengeance 2002, The Rock, Angle, and Undertaker.
Yes.
Yeah, really good match.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it is because that's they made the decision to put on The Rock because Stone Cold refused to lose to Lesnar, wasn't it? Around that time, I believe, because Lesnar obviously didn't face The Rock at SummerSlam. He went to face Stone Cold, I think, but they switched it.
It was they wanted him to lose on Raw.
That's it, Lesnar. King of the Ring, yeah. King of the Ring.
And he was like, let's make some money out of it. Let's get it to the pay-per-view because you've got Steve Austin losing on Monday Night Raw to Brock Lesnar. And I can see his point, at the end of the day, if they had done it like they had, was it a semi-final and a final at that year's King of the Ring?
Yeah.
And whether you love him or hate him, sometimes the man is spot on, and it's something that I do as well. Like I do a Gold Rush tournament, but on last night, yeah. So at that event, you just have two semi-finals and the final, but you have the qualifying matches in the lead up on the other shows. So you have the people following all that time. And Jim Cornette said it, if you've got 8 guys or 16 guys in a one-night tournament, how can you sell the main event? Because no one knows it. So the only option is to either have the final or 2 semi-finals and the final on the one pay-per-view. If Steve Austin even lost in the semi-final, it would have, it did good numbers anyway, but it would have done them better than a Raw rating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I think that was probably the right decision to be fair at the time. As part, obviously, to leave the company, and he wouldn't return to be a full-time wrestler ever after that, which is really quite weird when you think about it. One decision like that, and that's it. Obviously, neck injuries obviously added up to it too. But by the time we got basically to the end of the brand split, which the official end date, I found this is August 29th, 2011. I don't know where they plucked that out from, but for a long while, kind of at least from 2009, because we haven't touched upon it. The ECW brand was a thing, and they had a talent exchange with SmackDown, and they had a talent exchange with Raw as well, which led to interesting things like the Sandman having a match on Monday Night Raw, a straight wrestling match on Monday Night Raw, which is just really very odd. But it is very odd. You think the Sandman had an actual wrestling match with no hardcore rules in 2007 on Monday Night Raw. He was part of the Raw brand for about 6 months, I believe, before he got released, probably from being drunk or something. And then then we started having 3 hour rules. I'm sorry?
Wasn't that his entire gimmick though? Drinking, smashing a beer can on his head.
He proved to be popular. The ECW stars, some of them proved to be popular, and they wanted to give obviously more, shed more light to the ECW brand at the time. But I think for a short while, this is probably again another episode entirely. For a short while, Vince McMahon did somewhat care about ECW brand, but I think once he saw that it wasn't going to end up becoming like another Raw SmackDown, he was just a bit like,
Well, I think it would have done.
But he put it on Sci-Fi, which it wasn't a mainstream network, and it was a 1 hour show. The thing that Shane McMahon has actually said is that when they were on the internet, because it was an internet show, which then anyone could watch, and I think that was kind of, he said that was the beginning stages of them start playing around with the WWE Network app and stuff. That they could add more freedom, but the minute they put it on a network, they all of a sudden got restrictions, so they couldn't have the count outs, they couldn't have the no count outs, the no disqualifications, the blood, all of this, which you can kind of understand. But if you're going to take a brand, and even if you're going to put your own spin on it, you've got to stick to the original script of it. Like, it would be the exact same thing as a movie remake. Like, even if it's a comic book, you've got to stick to the source material, because otherwise the fans of that will not enjoy it, because they'll go, well, that was messed up and that was wrong and I didn't like this twist. But it's not ECW, it's WWE ECW. No, it's not. How can you do that? Blah de blah, etc. I think they should have stuck with what they had on the internet, because that's what ECW was. It was this underground,
like alternative
type promotion. Exactly.
That's the kind of issue I saw. Is it was an alternative, but the moment they put it on TV, they had to get in line with the Watershed, which was a very new thing at the time. Not long after that, Channel 4 was like the only program, like channel, that didn't have a watershed. So for those of you that don't know or don't study anything to do with TV and film, a watershed is essentially, it's PG on certain channels up until 9 p.m. I don't know if that's the same in the other countries, but it is in the UK. So after 9 p.m. is when you can do whatever you want, essentially. So swearing, gore, etc. So the moment they put ECW on Sci-Fi, they had the watershed to deal with, and they were like, we can't put it on after 9 or put it on after the watershed finishes, because what do we do then? No one will be up, no one will watch it. So if they, I agree, if they kept it on the internet show like they originally had it on, and kept to the original idea, I think it could still be going strong today, potentially.
I think
Yeah.
the money side of it too. I guess like having a network television deal always kind of you know.
Are we going on a trip?
We are
Yeah,
going on
I
a
think. Look, like each W brand, like as well. I think they it was a DVD sales as well, which obviously promoted them to obviously do it, and obviously you'd think that audience would be well at the internet side of things, in terms of like stuff like that. But as we get towards the end, anyway, like it basically died out because I think USA they liked the idea of this 3 hour the 3 hour Raws. And you had stuff like the Slammies, like it kept becoming like there was always an occasion basically for all three brands to be under one roof.
You mentioned that they brought the Slammies back, sort of, in a form of the podcast they do, WWE The Bump. They now have the Bumpies.
Yeah, and don't they have the NXT Year End Awards as well? I guess.
Yeah, but that's more of like a legit award show, whereas the Bumpies is like a weird spin-off of the Slammies.
Yeah,
that's mad.
But look, let's get some final thoughts then, because I mean, there's lots we're going to touch upon during this. I'm sure people comment and will be talking about it, whatever. But it's a massive thing when you think about it. Like, it's spanned 9 years. So tail end of the Attitude Era, when the company was WWF, through the Ruthless Aggression and even into the PG era, by the time it ended in 2011. And I think, although the kind of competition element of it kind of faded a little bit over time, it still feels like a big deal when you rewatch that initial draft announcement. Anyone, please go back and watch the initial announcement of the draft, how they treated it, And obviously, many of the elements, obviously, that they found their way into the new brand split. Though I do think the one thing they've improved upon is they made the championship situation a bit easier. They had the belts already, and they just split the belts in half, basically, and then created SmackDown Women's, Raw Tag Champions, etc. So everything kind of evened out, kind of thing. They did try the split pay-per-views, it didn't work, and the GMs did work for a little bit, but they've now gone authority figureless for about 2 years now, almost.
I mean, they had the behind-the-scenes GMs, didn't they, with Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman recently for Raw and SmackDown, but that didn't go well because.
Well, they were legitimate roles, though.
They were kind of potentially going to bring them in. I don't know, but that didn't go well because Bischoff got the sack, and then they went to Paul Heyman. Well, you're focusing on your in-ring stuff.
Yeah, now Bruce Pritchard runs both brands,
which is quite bizarre for me.
One of the things,
it's not for me. Because I think
I definitely think that you need some sort of authority figure, even if it's just playing a character. Because the example, when I watched WrestleMania this year, and it was the Seth Rollins Kevin Owens match, and they just decided they were going to have a hardcore match right then and there, and the referee appeared. It's like,
a lot like that on at the
moment. Hang on, like I don't really watch a lot of wrestling. Like for nowadays, I'm still a fan of the old stuff, so I'll go back and watch the stuff from when I was a kid or younger. I'm just not a fan of the product. Yeah, exactly. Like even watching WCW Thunder and stuff, because there was more wrestling and that's the thing. That's kind of the way that they worked it, because they didn't have all the stars on Thunder because of their contract, so it was like, right, let's fill this with the wrestling show, and I think that's what they based it on entirely when they had Raw and SmackDown split. But having an authority figure is always good, because even if it's this general manager's great, and then all of a sudden he does a turn and it's like, actually, I'm not here for you, I don't care about you. Well, you should, or it's you're sticking it to someone that's being a thorn in the side. It creates that much more drama. Like, look how popular Austin was. You don't always have to have it. You can always have the really aggressive heel, physically or verbally threatening the GM, and a rivalry start, because it's like, I'm the champion, you should respect me, blah de blah. That old Cowboys and Indians story. All of a sudden, the big strong baby face runs out, makes a save or whatever, and it's like, I don't appreciate the fact that you're threatening my boss. They're the ones that have given me this opportunity, or something like that. It just creates an interesting dynamic then it becomes and you could even twist that on its head, because you do a backstage skit and all of a sudden you get there's actually a relationship here, but what type of relationship is it? Is it a personal one? Is it a professional one, or what? You're already planting the seeds for that babyface to become a heel later on down the line, because he's now, do you remember that time I run in and saved you? Yeah, I do. Well, give us a title shot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that interaction, wasn't there? During the kind of peak GM, and I think someone who needs to get a shout out here is Teddy Long. He managed to make the face GM role work, which is very hard to do. Especially because he was known as a villain manager back in the 90s.
I think it's safe to say that Teddy Long put over tag team wrestling and The Undertaker single-handedly.
Yeah, and that'll be another thing. Along with John Cena, that'll be, and the spinner belt, and a few other things. I think that'll be one of the things I'll always take from the brand split era of the WWE, is Teddy Long making tag team matches and making people go one-on-one with The Undertaker. It will stay ingrained in my head.
Do you know what?
As long as I live, as long as I support wrestling. It's just
long after Teddy Long's gone to the graves, whatever, kick the bucket, whatever you want to call it. There's no sugarcoating it. His memes will forever haunt the internet.
Yeah.
You will never ever. Someone's going to go along and go, "Who is that guy in wrestling that made everyone do a tag team match?" And then it will click.
So overall, guys, just
Nope.
Yeah, you can just see it now. You're gonna go one-on-one in a tag team match with The Undertaker. In walks Farouk. Damn.
Well, yeah, another one. He retired, didn't he? And obviously JBL we got as well out of that split, I guess. So there was some success in those splits. But anyway, to kind of round it all in, because we don't want to talk forever, but round it all in. Do you think the initial brand split worked, and do you think that's why they brought it back? And name your favourite moment that we haven't mentioned already of the original brand split. Coming first to you, Jay.
Oh, that's a good one. Right, I definitely think it worked for the first couple of years. One of the things that I did really like was the US title tournament, especially when they had put it on Eddie Guerrero, because I could not think of anyone better to put it on at that time. Maybe Chris Benoit or Rhino. I'm gutted that they didn't bring Rhino into the title fold. Just even have Rhino say, "I deserve a title shot against Eddie," but whatever, it didn't happen, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, that was one of my favourite moments, was when that happened, and Big Show choke slamming him, I think on his lowrider or something.
Yeah, in his car.
Yeah, that was anything with Eddie Guerrero of that time was, I thought,
golden.
phenomenal. Yeah,
it was golden during that time period. I know, Josh, you're a bit younger than us, but any kind of moments that have stuck out, obviously, that you've had to obviously watch since?
It wouldn't quite be moments, but one thing I did love about the brand split at the time was they, not long after, they brought out a show called, kind of like TNA Explosion, but they brought in what was called WWE Superstars. Essentially, it was just AEW Dark, but for the brand split, so anyone could be on the show, and it was just wrestling. There was no storylines on Superstars. It was just anyone could compete against anyone. It was like an open fight night, essentially, but it took away from the dramatics of wrestling and just had wrestling, and it had like some of these big like dream matches that you could never get anywhere else, like CM Punk taking on someone from the opposite brand, something you'd never see before and never see again. So yeah, there wasn't really a distinct moment during the brand split, but
they also had it because they used to have Sunday Night Heat.
Yeah,
they had Saturday. Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Saturday Night Velocity. I used to love those shows just because it was something extra.
Yeah, they were kind of like the house shows at the time for them, essentially, because they'd just be like, well, chuck the show there, or chuck this one there.
if you're a big fan of Cruiserweight Wrestling, Velocity 2000-2004 is where it is, along with WCW, obviously, WCW. It's another little hidden gem of like cruiserweight action, really, along with some tag team stuff too. And it was nice having the kind of sister shows, I think that's what they call them, accompanying shows to their brands.
Velocity was
they
like
were
the better
brands
version of
exclusive at one
205
point, and then,
Live.
Superstars got brought in after that. But yeah, I think overall we've assessed that it did work. I think that's why, in my opinion, I think they have brought it back, because there was that weird period really between that 2011 and 2016 where a lot of the kind of problems that we've touched upon that the Brown Split avoided kind of came back into things. And then since 2016, although they've tried with the wildcard rule and with brand invitationals and all sorts, they have kind of stuck at it, and it works, I think, because like you say, you have different people getting a different opportunity, which is what it's about, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jay, thanks for that. You've been great. It's been great to have you on our season 2.
Thank you for having me.
And we have more guests coming up. Next week we're going to have Wrestling's Craziest Gimmicks with our guest, former DKW British champion TJ Riff. And later on this year we're going to have a 2-part episode dealing with and looking at the career of Y2J, Le Champion himself, Chris Jericho. Obviously that's a 2-part episode. This is your 30-year veteran.
Let's not forget the mid-season finale. For that, we'll be joined by the guys over at WrestleVlogs in the US, where we'll be doing another special 2-part episode. One starting on episode 1 of that, starting on our channel, and then the second part finishing on their channel, and we'll be kind of looking at the world of wrestling, shall we say.
Yeah. Well, that's all to come. Thank you very much, Jay. And we shall see you all on the other side.
No worries.
Bye for now.
Thanks for having me. Take care.